Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing exceptionally well. Welcome back to the channel. Before we begin, as always, I am not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, I'm not an insurance agent, I am not a financial advisor. I'm just an individual who really likes whole life insurance, and so I try to learn as much as I can about it, and then ultimately share what I have learned with you. You should consult a professional prior to implementing anything that I speak about here. Today, we're going to be talking about creditor protection and whole life and how it actually works. Um, this one, if you are looking for creditor protection and you are looking to invest slash save slash deposit inside of a whole life policy a significant amount of funds, you will definitely want to speak with a lawyer to ensure that you're setting this up correctly. Now, before we actually talk about creditor protection and whole life, what we first need to understand is how liability works, both personally and um, corporately, because these are typically the main ways that whole life policies are owned. So, essentially, what ends up happening is, let's just say you've got your personal self, right, and you have assets, and these assets can be anything, cash. These can be investments. They can be property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when you hear the term creditor protection, essentially all this means is that if, in the event that a creditor were to sue you, these assets really would be very, very, very difficult for creditors to actually go and get judgments against, or to try and seize and take them from you, essentially, right? And asset protection is this whole vast thing, and I don't claim to be an expert in it. But essentially, what ends up happening, especially with business owners, is they have an operating company, which is typically owned by a holding company. And then ultimately, this goes down into your personal side of things. So you essentially funnel the money that you make from your operating company down to your holding company. And then the money that you make from your holding company, you either hold it there, hence the name, or move it down to your personal side. What this prevents is that in the event that your operating company is sued, this money in your holding company is shielded to a certain degree. Now, this is a very complicating topic, and I'm not going to get incredibly complex in it unless you want me to, because I know a lot about the, I guess, abilities that creditors have in pursuing actions in this whole creditor process. But ultimately, a lot of people think that if they have money in a holding company, or personally, that if they can't get it, or vice versa, in whichever way that you go down this route. But the truth of it is that if your operating company gets sued, and creditors can prove that you did some nefarious act and that transfers were made, I guess, fraudulently, or with the intent to hide the funds, et cetera, et cetera, they can pierce this corporate veil and go after the holding company. And naturally, if they sue you personally, they can, you own the holding company, unless you involve a trust, which is a whole topic for another day. And you own this holding company, which means that they can pursue this holding company as well. So this is where whole life is, where you see creditor protection. Okay. In almost every province that I am aware of, whole life insurance and life insurance in general, and the cash surrender values associated with it, are exempt from seizure or execution orders. They're essentially, basically, they're completely creditor protected. Okay. If they are structured correctly. Now, the way that these end up getting structured correctly is you need to have a, for lack of a better term, a preferred um, beneficiary. All right. So, what is a preferred beneficiary? So, again, this depends on the province, which is why you should seek professional advice. But it's a spouse, typically common law or married. It's a child, or a parent. If you have a beneficiary that's one of these three things, and this is in relation to the policy, not necessarily in relation to you, and why that is, important is because you could own a policy on your your child, which is the beneficiary is you, that would still have creditor protection. um, so regardless, you need to have a preferred beneficiary. This protection does not apply to corporately owned policies, which is really critical to understand, because a lot of people think that if they have, this is them, and if they have a holding company that is owned by them, that if they hold their whole life insurance policy inside of their corporation, that it is completely safe and nothing can happen to it. But the reality is if a creditor sues you and they get a seizure order or something to that effect, a judgment, you name it, they can, and I'm being simple here, okay? I'm not overcomplicating this. They can try to attack the holding company and thus the assets that are in it, okay? And so, from a creditor protection standpoint, the safest place for, and again, without getting too complicating in this, I know I keep saying that because this is a very vast topic that you really want to seek legal advice for. But without getting too complicating, the safest place that your whole life can be owned is personally with one of those preferred beneficiaries in place. And essentially, you will have full, complete creditor protection, and a creditor can't hurt you. So, this is how creditor protection whole life actually works. If you have any questions below, let me know. I do know a lot about this concept, and it can get incredibly complicated, and it really depends on the province you live in. And so I know a few of the provinces. I do not know all of them. And like I say, my big asterisk is if you are going to, well, you should not rely on me for this advice. You should be seeking professional legal advice, someone that understands the liability surrounding whole life and the protections that you get when it is properly structured, and that includes naming a proper beneficiary. All right, thank you everybody, and enjoy. Make sure to subscribe and like the video.